Why would I eat only Italian food for 30 days? Wouldn't I get fat? Let me ask you something. What do you think of when you think of Italian food? Meatballs, pastas, cheeses, breads, pizzas. Well, now, while you're right about those foods, you're going to find out that there is so much more to Italian cooking and recipes. My name's Chris, and I love to cook at home for my family. And this is an experiment that I have been wanting to do for a long time. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner with only traditional Italian recipes. But before I tell you about those recipes, I have to tell you about the rules I set for myself before I began. Only using imported Italian flours, grass-fed meats and butter only, real imported Italian cheeses, raw milk, no pasteurization that kills off all the good stuff in milk. What? Only fruits and veggies that we grew in our garden, and if we needed something that we didn't grow or couldn't grow, it had to be organic, if not locally grown. Our pastas and breads have to be homemade. I was not allowed to Google images of the recipes to see what they were supposed to look like. Wines and other cocktails or beer had to also be imported from Italy. And to throw another wrinkle into this, I visited my doctor to get some blood work done. I wanted to find out some baseline numbers like cholesterol, weight, and some others, and I'm going to tell you what those numbers were and what they were after the 30 days here shortly, but you have to know, you are going to be amazed. But here's a hint towards the end. People in Italy actually live an average of 5 years longer than we do here in the United States. So let's break down exactly how I researched and created the recipes. I wanted to make sure that I experienced foods from each region in Italy, so I used ChatGPT. I asked the robot, create a meal plan of breakfasts, lunches, and dinners of recipes from week 1, northeastern Italy, week 2, northwestern Italy, week 3, southeast Italy, week 4, southwest Italy, and central Italy. That way I could virtually travel my way through the versatile and unique menus that exist throughout all of Italy. After going back and forth with the robot to be sure I was getting historically accurate and traditional recipes from each region, I also had to create grocery shopping lists and wine lists as well that were native to each region. I have to admit, ChatGPT did an amazing job at creating these meal plans, as well as providing traditional substitutions for items that were difficult to source, like fresh rabbit, for instance. I'm about to go over my favorite meals from each week, but I also have a surprise for you later on in the video so that you can see and possibly try every single recipe for yourself. That's 4 weeks of breakfasts, lunches, and dinners from Italy. Now, if I butcher some of these names, I apologize. The regions I focused on for northeastern Italy were Veneto, Friuli, Venezia Giulia, Trentino, Alto Adige, and Emilia Romagna. The meals from these northeastern regions were hearty. They had influences from Austria, especially the region of Trentino Alto Adige. The food in the Veneto region is influenced by its geographic diversity, coastal areas, plains, and alpine areas, which include cities like Venice to Verona. The foods from the Giulia region are widely influenced by its borders with Austria, Slovenia, and the Adriatic Sea, so you'll find meals from coastal areas all the way to game and forest foods from the mountains. The meals from the Emilia-Romagna region were rich, salty foods like Parmigiano Reggiano, Prosciutto di Parma, pork, lamb, high-quality produce. From what I learned while doing this experiment, this region has a strong tradition of home cooking, which makes it a real inspiration for a place to visit for me. Let's start with some of my favorite breakfasts from these regions. Frittatas that had mushrooms and Asiago cheese, asparagus and fontina cheese, and just the absolute divine flavors of prosciutto di San Daniele with melon were so good. Lunches, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but Jota, Jota, absolutely surprised me. I loved it. It's from the Friuli Venezia Giulia region, and it's a bean soup with cabbage. I had to order those kinds of beans on Amazon, and they are my new favorite. I made a radicchio salad with walnuts and gorgonzola, and I loved it, but I didn't love the radicchio. That has never been my favorite. I just find it too bitter. I bet when it's fresh from their region, it's different, but here, I no likey. But the gorgonzola is just a beautiful blend of tangy and creamy, and that is a flavor that I absolutely love. The dinners, Hunter's chicken was fantastic. I did that twice, once with white wine and once with red wine. I prefer the red. Now, this dish is popular in many regions of Italy, and the ingredients vary based on destination, but one thing that I thought was funny was that I don't know many hunters in my area that travel around with wine to cook with, but Maybe in Italy they do, and I have to tell you, that would make me want to be a hunter in Italy. I have never had frico before. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. And I actually made this one wrong, but it was excellent. It's basically a fried potato pancake, but it should be much thicker than I made it. Like I said earlier, I didn't want to look at pictures. I wanted to try to figure it out on my own, but it came out so good. It was just super savory, salty, creamy in the middle from the potato, but crispy. Just a really nice dish. Gnocchi di zucca, that's fun to say, with sage butter, pumpkin gnocchi. Yeah, that was magical and really easy. Lumps of Italian flour with roasted butternut squash topped with butter and fried sage. Come on. Another thing that I absolutely loved was a lot of the pasta dishes had just a sage butter on top of it. Man, I mean, so simple but so flavorful, but it really made the homemade pastas shine. Costacine alla griglia, so grilled spare ribs, was really good, but not at all how I would normally prepare ribs or even spare ribs for that matter. This style is just grilled over flame, which is my favorite way to cook. These were great, but to be honest, I've never been a huge fan of spare ribs, but the dish that captured my heart, mind, and soul was ravioli al uovo from the Emilia-Romagna region. Like I said, super rich recipes. These were just giant homemade ravioli filled with an egg yolk and a ring of ricotta cheese around the yolk, boiled and then topped with a simple sage butter. Like I said, not only were these fun to make, they weren't easy, but they weren't hard either. Eating them made it all worth it. There are few things that you make from scratch that once you taste them, you say to yourself, all of that effort was so worth it, worth the time. These were at the top of that list. Overall, this was the perfect introduction to Italian cooking that we needed. Everything was so hearty and rich, primarily easy, but indulgent at the same time. Now on to week 2, which featured regions from northwestern Italy that included Lombardy, particularly Milan, Liguria, Tuscany, and Piedmont. Dinners from these regions really changed from week 1, and these regions aren't really all that far from each other. It just goes to show you how foods and tastes can differ even when they're so close together. My favorites, more frittatas. Honestly, I have never made a frittata before this experiment, and it made me wonder what the hell I've been doing with my life. Zucchini and vegetable frittatas, and the more I made them, the more I learned how to fine-tune them and make them better each time. For instance, switching to a smaller cast iron skillet so that the frittata turned out thicker and cooked more evenly, from simple things like scrambled eggs with prosciutto and spinach, all the way to apple fritters, which my daughters could not get enough of. Oh, and can we just talk about how amazing whole fat yogurt, local honey, and hazelnuts are together? This is one of those things that's so exciting about doing something like this, is I would have never bought raw hazelnuts to eat with my yogurt. Honey, sure, but hazelnuts, never would have thought of that. Did it, loved it, gonna keep doing it. And I had a very busy week traveling for work on week 2, so I didn't do many lunches, but the ones I did were simple soups like minestrone and pasta fagioli. Dinners, cotolette alla Milanese, breaded veal cutlets with arugula salad. We don't really eat much veal in our normal diet, but this made me want to. So easy, so tender, and savory and crunchy. From Liguria, we made a chicken dish with olives and pine nuts that truly shocked us. And we put that as one of our must-try-agains. Another meat that we don't ever cook, in fact, never have until this experiment, is lamb. We made a baked lamb with potatoes that really had us wondering why we don't incorporate lamb more as a protein. It's mostly lean, it's very tender, it's easy to work with, but the star of the week had to be the pork ossobuco with risotto alla Milanese. Saffron risotto, that is. Another thing that I have never made is risotto. It was much easier to make than I anticipated and that I heard it was, but it did take way longer than I expected. The addition of saffron, which I had from a grower in Afghanistan where it primarily thrives, made the risotto taste so special. There was just something different about it than the usual creamy risotto you might find at a steakhouse. The bright yellow color was absolutely gorgeous and so indicative of what you expect from a dish with saffron in it. Pair that with pork ossobuco, which I only used pork because I couldn't find a beef shank when I wanted to make it. So I asked the robot, I said, what's another protein that I can use for ossobuco that would be traditional and also delicious? And when it said pork shoulder, it delivered. I first seared that pork shoulder over an open fire with hot coals, which added a much deeper flavor profile, and then slow cooked it in our own tomato sauce from our garden. It was to die for. And you'll see that entire recipe coming up on the channel very soon. In my opinion, it's the perfect date night meal, and you'll find out why that is in that future video. For dessert, we made panna cotta, which is a super simple pudding-like dessert with cream and vanilla topped with chocolate sauce and fresh berries. Oh my God. Not only was this so easy, but it knocked the socks off of everyone that tried it. Stay tuned for that in an upcoming video as well. Our daughters were asking for seconds and thirds of that one. On to week 3. As we move south into regions like Apulia, Calabria, and even Sicily, the cuisine really begins to change. We really began to see even more of an emphasis on seafood, tomatoes, beans, eggplant, and rustic pasta dishes. Not that those aren't traditional in the northern parts, but just way more evident in the southern, at least from what I researched. Breakfast showcased some more frittatas with additions like ricotta and pancetta, eggs poached in tomato sauce, omelets with sausages and peppers. The lunches began to introduce a lot more seafood than my northern lunches, salads with calamari and shrimp, chickpea salads, and more. They were really light and refreshing lunches. And they were fun to make too. I just took all the seafood, tossed them in a little bingo rotator looking thing, and just seared them right over the grill. Awesome stuff. Dinners like branzino alla siciliana, sea bass with capers, olives, and tomatoes cooked in a white wine sauce were inherently Sicily, along with polpette al jugo, beef and pork meatballs, and those were some of the best meatballs we've ever made. And you know, eggplant parmesan was spectacular. I don't like eggplant, but this, it just hit right. It was from our garden, so it just made a huge difference. Another dinner I have never made was braciole, Sicilian-style beef rolls. I loved the inclusion of many more tomato sauces mixed with bright and acidic white wines and pine nuts. Pine nuts are one of those things that we don't eat enough of. They're kind of expensive, but make a huge impact even in small amounts to many dishes. Overall, if I were to describe this region's food, it would be comforting and surprising. I really did learn a lot about some very unique ingredient combinations. For this week's desserts, I stopped at an incredible Italian bakery. I know I'm violating one of my rules here, but I just didn't have enough time to make fresh cannoli or pastacati. But we stopped at an incredible Italian bakery in Monroeville, PA, which is just outside of Pittsburgh, called Moyo's. Picked up some fresh cannoli, and they stuff it fresh with ricotta cream as well as chocolate, or half and half, and they're humongous. So incredibly good, but it was the pastacati that really took me to another dimension. Pastacati is a delightful light pastry from the Apulia region that has a buttery crust and creamy filling with a lemon flavor, or sometimes vanilla. This had lemon. Magnificent. And finally, we moved on to southwestern Italy as well as central Italy. I had to get Rome in there somehow. In fact, I had to make cacio pepe twice because I screwed it up the first time. You would think that a dinner that only has 3 to 4 ingredients would be easy. Well, it's not that easy. But once I realized my mistake of putting the pasta in the pan when it was too hot, it was easy to correct that. My goodness, something as simple as cheese, water, pasta, and pepper could truly heal the world. Definitely one of my favorite meals from this entire experiment. Saltimbocca is so easy and so flavorful. Another dinner with only a few ingredients that really should be a staple in our dinner repertoire going forward. I really did love the simplicity of the dishes from these regions, especially Rome. It's really a perfect example of what can come from real ingredients. And yes, I finally got to make some pizza. I made the traditional margherita style pizza, just dough, tomato, cheese, and basil. What else do you need in life? And for dessert, we made homemade stracciatella, vanilla gelato with chocolate shavings. Well, I tried to make the chocolate into shavings, but it's sort of just all melded together with streams of chocolate rather than shavings. Regardless, it was so good and my children loved making it, and yeah, eating it too. Okay, like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you want to check out all the recipes that I cooked and see every single meal that I made, you can visit my website at the link on the screen right now. There's also a QR code if you're watching this on your TV, and you can check out all of them. I encourage you to try them for yourself and let me know what you think. Okay, now you've seen some of the highlights of only eating Italian food. Now, how did it affect me specifically? Well, I lost 9 pounds in total. throughout that entire 30 days. My cholesterol went down by 10 points, which is crazy. It just goes to show you how these foods can affect our bodies differently when they're fresh and homemade every single day. And yes, we did work out during this time, but we always have. So I would say we probably work out about 20 to 30 minutes a day. We do some light weight training and some light cardio depending on the day. And that's only if our daughters don't wake up and make us stop to go take care of them and get them going with their days. So we did our best to keep along with those workout routines, but I mean, 20 to 30 minutes a day was all it took. And it was the food that really made the difference. The cooking, my gosh, all of the cooking that we did, and my wife was so helpful throughout this whole thing. You have to have somebody back you up in life, and my wife is that absolute person. And she was able to get so many of the meals started, and then I come finish them when I got done with work. So it was really a team effort that we were able to get all of this done in the 30 days together, and it made such an impact on our nightly dinners together as a family. That is honestly one of the most important things I think you can do as a family, is sit down every single night and have dinner together. And if time is flying by for you, cooking meals at home together or for breakfast, lunches, and dinners, whether it's just one meal a week that you cook together, change those meals up so that you can slow time down. And if you want to learn more about how I slow time down, check out this video right here. As always, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe because we're taking a train over to France for the next 30 days. Well, I only lasted 3 weeks. You'll find out more when you see that video. See you then.